Okay, well, hello again. To everybody. We'll start the WebEx now. I think everyone who's going to join has joined us. So welcome to this short webinar, Achieving Performance Excellence in Your Organisation. Moving on to the first slide. I hope everyone can see this okay. Bear with me one moment. There we go. Okay. Situation normal. Just a little bit about us, first of all, for those of you who don't know Intechnica. We position ourselves as a digital consultancy. We specialise in all things performance assurance related to software, cloud services. Cloud is a very current topic. I'm sure a lot of you are already involved in cloud in some way. We embrace that as a significant offering, and we use cloud in performance delivery, consulting, testing. We also develop software, primarily critical web and mobile applications. So we cross over between dev and performance. Of course, those two aspects of IT are very, very tightly joined. Can't really have one without the other if you're going to produce quality software. So we definitely consider ourselves specialists in application performance. We take a holistic view of performance, a nice sort of woolly word, but I think it's appropriate. We look at the whole enterprise, network, platform, and application. I think you can only truly appreciate where you are in terms of performance if you look right across all these areas. It's very much a collaborative thing. We take our own medicine. We promote performance by design. We build applications following performance best practice. We're very much looking to enable that in the software that we write and the customers that we provide performance assurance services for. Bottom of the slide, you can see a range of our current clients. Cross-market market sectors, a little bit of focus on retail, but the message, the concepts that we promote are very much applicable to any area of business. A little bit about me. Won't stay on this too long. I'm Ian Molyneaux. I'm the head of performance at Intechnica. I've been involved in performance aspects of IT for quite a long time. I've been in IT from the distant days of mainframes only. So I've watched everything evolve. Technology stacks change, ideas come and go. My recent experience, 12 years with CompuWare. Those of you familiar with CompuWare, significant player in the, application management and performance area. After CompuWare, I was with Micro Focus, and now I'm with Intechnica. My focus has always really been around application performance testing and management. It's an area of IT I enjoy, I'm passionate about, and I think I'm certain that as a company, Intechnica has a lot to offer in that area. For my sins, I managed to publish a book in 2009, The Art of Application Performance Testing. You can get that through O'Reilly. That's the one and only plug I'll make for my book during the WebEx. I wrote the book essentially because there's very, very little information out there in the marketplace at the time to actually help people understand performance, how you go about performance testing applications. And the book's been well received, and it seems to have been helpful, and that's all I was trying to achieve, provide a little bit of help, take my years of experience, put it into some form of reference material that people could get access to. So that's enough about me. Let's move on to the WebEx. Our agenda, there's 4 areas we're going to cover briefly: why good performance matters, and importantly, why it's hard to achieve. How to assess the current level of performance maturity within your organisation. At a high level, how to start implementing a strategic approach to raising the level of performance maturity within your organisation, and a little bit on how automation tooling helps implement this an effective performance strategy. So how tooling is an enabler, if you like. So, first topic, why good performance matters. A very, very pertinent question, I think you'll agree. Before we get started, what do we actually mean by good performance? Well, performance can be many things to many people. It can be simply the response time of your core applications, either generally from the perspective of the end user. I guess there's a number of ways you could think of performance, but within the enterprise, I like to think of it as having all your core applications performant and available 99.9% of the time. Of course, there will always be situations where you have to perform maintenance. So it's keeping these core applications available to your end users, making sure the end users can do what they need to. They're not experiencing any frustration, and they're available 24/7. So you end up with end users who are happy and productive, which I'm sure you'll agree is a nice place to be. You could consider this a bit of a nirvana. Can you actually achieve this all the time? Well, certainly Intechnica, the company, thinks that we can help certainly improve where you are now. There will always be performance challenges, but there are certainly, I think, clear process and practice to help you mitigate the instances where your applications do struggle from a performance availability perspective, and keeping those end users as happy and productive as possible. And effectively, I suppose the end game here is that IT is delivering to the business. So IT is working in partnership with the business, delivering performance, available applications, and making sure that these applications are managed. So there is visibility of how applications are performing. We're being proactive as opposed to reactive in terms of dealing with any performance problems or challenges that may appear. Very, very much collaborative. That's a word we come back to. Because there's an ideal we're aiming for, but there'll always be performance challenges. I think failures, particularly for software applications, is often sudden and often difficult to predict. The graph here is just serves to show you, or demonstrate acceptable, fine performance, and suddenly an outage, probably and often unexpected. These are the sort of things that we're trying to avoid. I think we've all experienced problems of this type at some point. So, moving on, how do we actually achieve good performance? I don't think there's a silver bullet. If there is, then I think we'd all be there by now. Certainly in Intechnica's view, it's this collaboration, development, test ops, and the business working together in harmony. It has to be a broad brush approach. I think IT has traditionally been quite siloed in terms, particularly in terms of performance. It's not been the norm where, for example, an application is being developed that performance necessarily has been a primary driver from the inception of the application. And certainly something that we at Intechnica promote is raising the awareness of performance. And it starts in development, or at the point you take ownership of perhaps a packaged application that you're then looking to modify and change. Very, very key that what we tend to offer is, or recommend, is a performance risk assessment. The very first, at the start of a project, all the stakeholders are gathered together for a specific meeting to discuss areas of performance risk within either a new application, an application that's been changed, upgraded, or a package being modified. But it's deciding at this starting point where are the performance risks likely to be, what is the best way to mitigate these risks. Very, very important. Because if you don't do it at this early stage, it becomes progressively harder, generally more expensive, or difficult to resolve as you go further down the application lifecycle. I think that message has been out in the marketplace for a while, but it isn't any less valid and something we very, very much promote. So, I guess before you can enhance what you're doing now, you have to really establish a benchmark. Where are you at the moment in terms of performance maturity within your organisation? And the way you do that, certainly from Intechnica's point of view, is that you need to carry out a series of audits. Now, we break the IT area up into three pillars: development, test, and operations. These three areas form the core of IT in our opinion. And you need to look at each of these areas and what are you doing now in terms of performance? Is there a general awareness of performance? Is it a key consideration? In case of development, we use the term performance by design. Is that how you approach developing software? Within testing, how do you approach performance testing? Do you do performance testing? If you do, whereabouts do you do it? Where is it scheduled? How do you do it? Do you use automation? And in operations, do you monitor your applications? I'm sure you do in some form. But are you monitoring the correct KPIs for your application? Are you collecting the right information? Are you collecting too much information? How do you analyze the information? Is it linked to your service desk? All these things need to be looked at. And by doing that, you can assess where you are now in terms of performance maturity. So by gathering all this information together, it allows us to create a benchmark. Compare where you are now to best practice, look for the gaps, and then, okay, how do we address those gaps? How do we improve process? How do we improve where we are? At Intechnica, we developed what we call the Performance Assurance Framework to assist in this process. At the bottom of the diagram here, you can see those three pillars again: development, test, operations. Then they underpin the rest of the diagram, which basically looks at the application life cycle at a high level along the top, pre-project, during a project, post-project, i.e. application rolled into production. On the left-hand side, the different, I suppose, disciplines or components that you need that map onto these pre-project, project, and post-project areas. So we're looking at the top. We start with performance governance, an overall view, some overall control within the enterprise. Underpinning governance is strategy and process. Is there actually a strategic document? Is performance formally defined for your business? And underpinning that, performance test management. And then we have performance design, engineering, performance acceptance, and then performance assurance once we deploy our applications to production. Dropping in performance testing is a key tactical. Performance testing is the way that you determine just how your applications are performing or likely to perform pre-deployment. It's also a very, very useful tool post-deployment to periodically test your application, ideally against its live infrastructure to see is it maintaining performance in terms of the points of measure, or have there been performance or capacity regression? So the framework is designed to identify the areas of performance that you need to address, you need to look at, need to focus on within your IT estate. Once you've done this assessment, you need to create an implementation plan. Now, the implementation plan, there's a couple of key points about this. It has to be collaborative. So it has to involve, ideally, all business units, all stakeholders, the business and IT. So it can't be siloed. It has to be across the whole estate. That might sound quite revolutionary to many people, but to be effective, it has to be this way. That's something we very much promote. I'd say cross-silo. It has to be across business units. There can't really be. There has to be a common convergence. So there is a common view. Projects in R&D, in discovery, in flight, and applications that are deployed. You have to have strategic goals for things like looking at perhaps your software procurement process, strategic activity, crucial if you've moved to a buy and configure rather than build in-house model, which seems to be quite common. You have to be very, very, very sure that the packages that you buy in are the correct, they're appropriate for the business, they're going to scale, they're going to be performant. So this is an example of a strategic performance action. And of course, there are many tactical performance areas you need to address as well. Perhaps the tool sets that you have on board, do you have appropriate tool sets at the moment for performance testing? Do you need to review? Do you need to buy another tool set? How do you develop software? What's your process for performance testing? All these tactical things that go into an overall implementation plan. Of course, this is all comparing to your benchmark, or the results of this auditing process. So you'll be doing some of this well, some of this not so well, some of this not at all. But at least once the audit's done, you're aware of that. So you can put this implementation plan together. So key takeaway, collaborative, cross-silo. So how do you, once you've got your implementation plan, so how do we put it into practice? Well, again, Intechnica's view is, and this is something that it comes out of a recent blog post, which I put onto LinkedIn, those of you familiar with that website, and generated quite a bit of discussion. I think there is a case for a new C-level role. I'll call it the CPO, or the Chief Performance Officer. You could argue that it perhaps is already part of the CIO's responsibility, but I think certainly in medium to large organisations, there is certainly a need to separate this function, have someone whose job is to look across all the silos, all the business units within the enterprise, and their focus is performance. You can see from the graphic here, this could be the CPO sitting at the top of the tree, dotted line to CPO, CIO and the board, or the CAB, the Change Advisory Board, essentially the primary gatekeeper for deploying applications. And then within each business unit, there's representation who report to the CPO. There may be cabs within each business unit. There may be an overall cab within your unit. You may not have a cab at all. But this is a desirable structure. And the key thing is there is someone, some person, some group, and their responsibility within the organisation is to look after performance. And I think there is definitely a case for this. You may disagree, but if an enterprise is going to centrally manage performance, then there has to be someone tasked with that role. The other thing you need to do is to create what we call application performance statements. Now, this is basically taking every one of your core applications and, if you like, creating a catalogue for that application covering these key areas: scope, statement of purpose, what does the application do, what is intended to deliver to the business, who owns it, is it the responsibility of a single business unit, how the application is designed, the technology stack, the way it uses memory, I/O, CPU, how asynchronous or synchronous the application is. This defines, if you like, the unique characteristics of an application. Operations, how it's deployed, how it's configured, how it's monitored. And then we come to the KPIs, very, very important. What do you need to monitor for this application to ensure that it is remaining performant? That's normal behavior for this application. And this is one of the key values of having this application performance statement. You're defining the unique characteristics. Again, I put a blog post out about this a little while ago, which again, created some discussion. I think the key thing here is that you may have a set of generic monitoring metrics, but they may not be suitable for all your applications. The key thing really is the thresholds around these KPI metrics. For instance, if an application is designed to use a lot of memory, then a memory KPI that perhaps has a threshold of 50% of memory would not be perhaps appropriate for this application, because by design it grabs as much memory as it can possibly use, and there's good reason for that. So that's the sort of information that an application performance statement would tease out. It's also very important to note what other applications and services this application interacts with, and then what business metrics are being collected for this application, and how does performance align itself with revenue. Interesting statement that. What parts of the application actually generate the most revenue? That will actually steer perhaps some of the effort in terms of how the application is tested. What areas can you safely ignore? There may be some, there may be none, but it's an interesting, slightly different view. So once you've got these application statements together, they then allow you to build and maintain load and capacity models for your applications. This is very, very key. So you understand how the applications are used, the load that they're likely to have to support. And we're talking really the peaks here and also looking at growth, looking forward. We are where we are now. How are things likely to change over 6, 12, 18 months? The load model needs to take all of this into account. Again, it's a defining set of effectively non-functional requirements for our application. And partly the load model is a capacity model, more about, okay, the infrastructure the application sits on, what does it need to sit on to provide the level of service that the business requires? Is that likely to remain static, or do we have to look at extending that, increasing the infrastructure that supports the application? Do we move to cloud? Another option we have. Do we take advantage of the flex that cloud gives us? It's another option looking at capacity to deal with those peaks. One of the big advantages that cloud vendors promote is this on-demand flex capacity, and then returning to a lower level, a more modest level of capacity once those peaks have gone. The other very important thing is it allows us to identify and align application infrastructure KPIs. This is often a cause of a lot of performance problems, where the KPIs that relate to the application and the KPIs that relate to the infrastructure that the application runs on are not, there's a mismatch, there's a disconnect there. So you're not actually monitoring your application appropriately performance. Out of the application performance statement, this information should be much, much more obvious, because you've gained an understanding of all the touch points within the infrastructure, all the parts of the infrastructure your application touches, and there may be some surprises there. There may be a database which is occasionally used by your application. So you can get to, in the worst case, you can have a situation where your application A runs fine, but periodically it launches a missile, if you like, a figuratively speaking missile at a database that another application uses, and can actually bring that application down. And it's because there wasn't an awareness of this interaction. So that's very, very important. Once you have this alignment, it then allows you it's much easier to construct a dashboard view of the applications within your infrastructure. Tying the infrastructure and the application together, so that you've got the complete picture. I guess is probably the best way to describe it. So that's a little bit about, at a high level, assessing where you are from a performance perspective, how you go about improving this where you are, and very much how Intechnica would approach this. I mean, the final thing we're going to talk about just briefly is automation. Automation underpins performance assurance. We refer to the 3 pillars again: development. We need automation to automate things like defect management. We need tools to profile our applications with building, developing code, and our build and deployment process should be automated as well. I mean, again, you'll be doing some or all of this, but we see automation as a fundamental enabler performance assurance, because you can't really achieve it without using appropriate automation in each of the 3 key pillars. Similarly in testing, functional test automation, performance test automation, both of those are key. Most companies are using automation to do testing, and some are quite mature in that respect. But how does it fit into the whole performance assurance model for your enterprise? Are you testing appropriately at the right times? Are you testing enough? Are you testing the right things? And the same operations. I think with the fact that most applications now, the vast majority, are some form of internet-facing web enablement, user experience monitoring is key. There's some great tools out there to help. So, and partly that, we have infrastructure monitoring and alerting. There's two key things. Again, automation, probably, arguably, the most important area. Looking at what your applications are doing now from the perspective of the end user, making sure you're monitoring the correct KPIs, going back to this application infrastructure alignment, and that you have appropriate alerting configured. So automation, each of the three pillars, very, very key. So it's putting it all together, I guess. It's an integration of process and automation. You may be using test-driven development, you may be making use of continuous integration testing, something we talked about earlier, what we had in Intechnica called BAU performance testing. So testing your live applications periodically to ensure that there aren't any performance or capacity regression. So the integration of process and automation, fundamental enabler for performance assurance within the enterprise. So that's it, short to the point. I hope you found some things in there that were interesting. I'm quite happy now to take a few questions.
Got a few comments here for you, Ian. Wondering how to apply these excellent principles to shrink-wrapped development or even arm's length development, semi-service, etc., where the target environment, customer, is unknown or at least not controlled by the development organisation.
Yeah, I think there is a challenge there, certainly. I mean, what we've talked about, I guess, in the presentation so far is much easier to achieve if we're all in-house. We have ownership of the application, the infrastructure. Where that's perhaps a little bit abstracted away, I think it comes back to collaboration, really. You have to get all the stakeholders together for a particular application. That may involve bringing in the software vendor, maybe system integrators involved, your in-house resource. I think the key is getting all the appropriate stakeholders in the same place. It might sound a little bit simplistic, but it's this collaborative approach again that gives you the best chance, I guess, of getting all the information that you need to build an application performance statement for your application. Okay. Yes, the CPO idea. It certainly created some interesting discussion on LinkedIn. I think the discussion is still running, last time I checked. It's on my, I have a group called Performance Testers on LinkedIn, and you're very welcome to join. I've had comment from quite a wide range of IT professionals, and I think generally everyone thinks it's a good idea. Whether you should create a CPO, another C-level role, I suppose you might get in the UK, you might get into bonus problems again. You know, these C-level guys. No, just kidding. It could be departments, you know, but someone needs to take ownership of performance within an organisation. I think it comes down to that. Just seen it so many times where this doesn't happen. It's very siloed. Worst case, you can get multiple applications being deployed by multiple business units that interact in an inappropriate way, and you end up with unexpected outages. Someone's got that visibility up top, and you're going. That's a big step to mitigating those sort of problems. Yes, the deployment models. That's something that would also be in the application performance statement. You need to identify the deployment. It may be as simple as small, medium, and large, simplistic, but if you have multiple deployment models for your application, you need those need to be in that statement. So that I think it's quite key. If you're selling software packages, what we're finding a lot of customers, they want proof that what they're buying is going to be appropriate for their needs. If you can supply them with demonstrable evidence that the application on this deployment model is going to perform to this level under this peak load, that's very reassuring, and I think it's reassuring to yourselves that you're selling the most appropriate product to the customer, reassuring the customer they're constantly getting at what they need. I think that's becoming more and more the norm. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. I'm sorry if I haven't got through to everybody's questions here, but I'm very happy to take up some of these offline, respond by email. Very welcome to send me an email. Yeah, I mean, if anybody's got any suggestions or anything else they'd like to see around performance, we're putting together a series of WebExes. This is the sort of first of a number, but if you have any particular suggestions for areas that you'd like us to focus on, very happy to consider those and possibly include those in future content. So this is, I think it's an industry-wide discussion, performance. It's very interesting, a lot of things happening. Cloud's given us some new options. But there's still a lot of performance challenges out there, and we're certainly at Intechnica, we're very keen to help companies overcome these performance challenges and improve the quality of the code they develop, the applications they build, and the quality of the service they provide to their end users. So thank you very much indeed, and look forward to having you involved in other WebExes in the future. Take care. All the best. Bye.